Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Waste into Resource session. I am excited to hear what Tara has to share. So many, many years ago, geez, it might have been like 10 years ago, there used to be a group called Resourceful PDX where a bunch of businesses and organizations gathered and really talked about resource sharing. And I just remember being enamored because I heard Tara speak up because we were working with the Port of Portland. They were talking about all of the discarded suitcases that go through the airport that are just abandoned, that are either in good shape or need some minor repair. And Tara just came up with this amazing and brilliant idea on how to collect those and repurpose them and upgrade them and all of that. And I just remember being so enamored and so very excited to have been able to keep in touch over the years. And then now with the amazing work that she's doing, taking her amazing creative skills and care and love for the repair economy, just turning things into a resource and to treasure that. So really excited. And with that, I'm just going to let you take it away and then we can have a conversation at the end. Please put questions in the chat and then if it feels relevant, I'll let Tara decide if she wants to stop and answer them or we'll save them to the end.
I'm going to try and get through this literally as fast as I can, because I think, time is short. Okay, so does that look okay for everybody? All right, cool. So yeah, I've been in history. I've been in waste reduction. I'm gonna slow down a tiny bit because I'm all excited to share with you. I've been in waste reduction for 17 years now, and most recently I ran the Repair Clark County program for the last 5 years here in Clark County. So we're in Vancouver, Washington, which is just across the border from Oregon and Portland. And now I'm contracted. I'm working with WSU Extension program. And I've had a very long-standing relationship with a local group called Retails, and they are the thrift store that benefits our local Humane Society. So that just kind of gives you a tiny bit of background. And then Rebuild, as it says here, is resilient efforts for building, upcycling, innovation, and landfill diversion, which I can never remember, so I had to write it down. Um, there we go. So another little bit of history is that, and I actually did a whole presentation on this, kind of like the history and where this idea came from, that is more extensive than what I can tell you here. If you're interested in more, tell me and I'll send you the link to the recording. But very, very quickly, when the pandemic hit, we weren't able to do repair events, obviously, and we eventually did this thing called Repair Goes Remote. I've done some presentations on that as well. But one of the things that we were doing before Repair Goes Remote happened was we were sewing masks. So I had a whole bunch of sewists in my program, and we learned about this mask thing, and then we had a bunch of road bumps. So we had like we didn't have enough fabric, and then we didn't have enough elastic, and then we didn't have enough t-shirts, and then we didn't have enough distribution. And part of the kind of the coalition that I had built up to that point helped solve all of those problems. And what I realize now is we were practicing resiliency. And I didn't really get that at the time. It was just kind of, one foot in front of the other and try to like solve this issue. But now I get that that's what that was. And apparently I can only use I'm going to skip life cycle analysis. I'm skipping hierarchy. Most of you probably understand that waste reduction is much, much better than, than it. So obviously the top three here, prevention, reduction, reuse, are better than recycling, and that's better than responsibly disposing, or at the very worst, littering or polluting our environment. And then so present, so I mentioned retails. They're a fairly large thrift store here in Vancouver, and I've had a very long-standing relationship with them. They served an integral part of the mask project as well. Again, different presentation. But what we're doing now, so because I've been there for the better part of, I think it's been about 10 years now, I've seen a lot of the waste issues in the back of house, right? So like the backside of the thrift store. And if you don't know this already, not everything that goes to a thrift store is going to end up on the sales floor. And that doesn't make it waste. It doesn't make it trash or garbage. It just makes it not good enough to slap a price tag on. Or if we did slap a price tag on it, no one would actually buy it for reasons, right? And those reasons are multitude, but suffice to say, there's a lot of stuff that is perfectly good, that has lots of life left in it, but is ending up in the dumpster. At worst, some cases, something has been able to be done, but basically that's what we're trying to expand on, is like, get that stuff out better. Also, I have this little YouTube link right here. I'm gonna skip it for now, but what it was is it's a very quick, it's 31 seconds long, I think it is. It's a time lapse of stuff that I found in the waste audits. And a bunch of it is like still perfectly, it's packaged. Like it's not, I'm just, I've been in this 17 years and I'm having a hard time with what I'm seeing. Like it's blowing my mind of the stuff that is good that could be used. But you have, time, energy, expertise. Those are like the missing pieces, if you will. Space. I didn't say that one. That's a big, huge one. I'm getting off topic. Okay. So the idea for Rebuild is that it would be an infrastructure amongst all of the nonprofits in our community. And if that were the case, if we could build that infrastructure, then what could happen? So we have a durable medical equipment lending library. We have, lots of organizations that work with people who are experiencing homelessness or experiencing transition. We have, organizations that serve seniors, artists, bulk buyers, resellers, basically lots and lots of options here. This is heavily collaborative versus competitive, right? So that's just kind of like me and the way my brain works. I'm so not a competitive person. And basically, so what we're trying to do is identify and divert from landfill things that could be all of these things that you're seeing here. Um, and so here's some examples. So the picture here is Megan at the thrift store. This stuff, everything she's holding in her hands was in the garbage. And we, pulled it out. That was just like, that happened to be one of the times that we were there and saw it and pulled it. But this is happening all day, every day, at every thrift store you can imagine. Or there's a table that needs a tiny bit of shoring up. And that was an example from some of my conversations with our local Habitat store. There's maybe fans or heaters that need a cleaning, or they need their reset button after the cleaning. They need the reset button done, or a fuse replacement, those kinds of things. Here is, so one of the organizations that we've been working with is a kind of a blue collar high school, skills building, a high school alternative, actually. And they have a fashion design group. And so you're seeing here, these are all things that would have gone in the landfill and that we were able to divert and make sure got to this textiles group so that they can be learning and doing more stuff. Uh, I'm dealing with a lot of cords right now. So these kind of smaller boxes, we're guesstimating that we're getting about two of these per week that are at the thrift store. So whatever that is, 104 boxes, and it's thousands and thousands and thousands of cords. And in most cases, nothing wrong with them, but they need to be separated. They need to be packaged enough that they can sell in the thrift store, or at the very least, we should be recycling them, right? And we're not currently. It's all going in the landfill right now. And then some examples of other excess materials that I've seen: vinyl, records, CDs, books, DVDs, hangers, candles, basically anything you can imagine comes to the store. Um, so right now we're very much in the data collection phase of things. We've got to know more how much stuff is coming in and then how much of that is able to be reused if we could put the time and energy and space towards that kind of thing. I think a lot of people might ask me, like, why aren't you focusing on like one or two things? And I have a lot of answers for that. I think I might be an undiagnosed ADHD person, but it just kind of like, to me, it's like it's all there and it's all going into the landfill. So, and then I come from a world of, the power of volunteers. So we had, I think it was 260 volunteers in the Repair Clark County program when I lost that job. And so I know the power of volunteers, and what I've been telling my volunteers that are coming on with me for this new program is whatever you're most interested in is where we're going to start, because we got to start somewhere and we got to try some stuff and we got to fail at some stuff, and then like we'll see where we go from there. And that is actually working out pretty well for me so far. Um, and then beyond that, I know we've talked about resiliency a lot in here, and heard from the wonderful people in North Carolina who were kind of dealing with the aftermath of Helene. And I think that a program like this is very much, I think that's the place for it, is that yes, I think we should be doing the day-to-day waste diversion, but then also can we be responding to either emergency or time-sensitive opportunities? What if there are 14 pallets worth of perfectly good stuff that the packaging changed, right? We know that manufacturers go through these things, and we know that that stuff ends up in landfill. So let's try to figure that out, and try to be an organization who can respond to something like that, right? We've got 14 pallets, but they got to be gone in a week. Okay, well then how do we deal with that, right? Like how do we maybe we collect 30 people and we process them all, and then we have the organizations who are already on board, who have already worked with us, and each one can take, each one of 7 different organizations can take 2 of those pallets, but no one of the organizations can take 14 at a time, that kind of thing. And then what I'm hopeful for is that this model works first of all, and then also that we can replicate it. So I think any community of size is going to have, as I mentioned earlier, these nonprofit organizations that are already experts in what they do. So there's no reason to try and, get waste wrapped up in that, even any more so than it already is, right? Waste is already universal. And so how can we basically be that kind of like that stopgap, before things end up in the dumpster, before they end up in the landfill? Let's redistribute them, repair them if they need it, and then redistribute them, get them to some place that can actually use those resources. If you want to get involved, I mentioned the monthly repair. I know we've talked about the monthly open repair calls. I almost always try to be on those. So if you want to chat with more with me, please do come to those. We also started, it's very small right now, and there's no reason why it can't be like why y'all can't be a part of it. So at the bottom there we have a Google group that is Rebuild WA. So go find us there as well. And I think that's it. So I'm going to stop there. I'm stop sharing. And I would love to have a conversation slash answer questions. And honestly, I have no idea if this even makes sense. I think it will make sense to a lot of the people here because y'all have been in the waste industry, like me. But I also know that I don't believe that what I'm trying to do has ever been done, which is good and bad for reasons. I'm going to look at the chat.
I have a
Liz, was
question
yeah, go ahead.
you might have addressed this quickly while I was eating lunch. How and having worked at nonprofits that get all kinds of donations, how often do you get stuff that's just trash?
I'm really glad you asked that actually, because I meant to say this and I totally didn't. So as we're doing the waste audits, so when I'm auditing waste, what I'm doing is I'm di literally digging through bins that are about to go into the dumpster, right? So these are things that have not been priced, that didn't make it to the sales floor for whatever reason. And if you had asked me before I started all of this, I think I would have guessed maybe like 10 to 20% of what was in there would be usable, right? So like 80 to 90% was probably true trash. What we're finding in the very limited, I mean, unfortunately, I'm only working 12 and a half hours per week right now. I'm very hopeful about getting a grant. And then if that's the case, I would be full time for at least 2 years. But what we're finding in those very limited waste audits are that between 1/2 to 3/4 of what is being thrown in the dumpster does not need to be. So, yeah, I mean, do we occasionally get the like pea soaked, the fur jacket? Of course we do. But by and large, things are able to be reused in some way, shape, or form. And especially then if you also are working with, like, we're working with the textile group so that we can be, I'm hopeful that eventually we'll be working with Columbia and Patagonia and REI and these guys so that we can get their seconds and or their returns and be fixing, small rips and tears and things like that, and then maybe redistributing those to foster kids or redistributing them to our local, school system, those kinds of things. So I think that I think already there's a lot of potential even without repair. And then I come from the world of repair, so I'm thinking that that will then like bump us, quite a bit higher than what we could do otherwise. So I hope that answered your question. If not, please just ask me again.
There's a couple comments. There was a discussion about has anyone approached the medical provider system? And there's a discussion around that. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that about reusable medical equipment.
Um, yes. I'm looking into it. That's about as far as I've gotten, unfortunately. And actually, it's interesting because not so much like full equipment, but one of the things that we're looking at doing is that the technical school that I mentioned earlier, they also have I think it's dental assistant and medical assistant programs. And I had chatted with somebody at the WSRA conference. It was like totally random, happened to sit next to this guy at lunch, and he mentioned suture kits. And I totally randomly mentioned that to the person that runs the textile design. And even as I was saying it, I was like, why am I telling her this? She doesn't care about this. And then she was like, well, have you thought about our medical assisting students? And I was like, no, but that's amazing. So we're trying to figure that out to where stuff that was used or opened in a hospital, not used, sorry, stuff that was opened in a hospital but unused. So it might be gauze or scalpels or scissors or things like that can then be reused in an educational setting. So that is one thing we're doing. I think all of these things are going to be there's no silver bullet of figuring this thing out, right? It's all just like a lot of conversations and a lot of trying stuff to see if it will even if my harebrained idea will even work.
Yeah.
I appreciate the thought of like, if there's other equipment that I will say one other thing quickly, and that is I somehow miraculously came up with a gentleman who is a retired um uh I can't think, breath therapist, and is still licensed. And so he will refurbish CPAP machines that can be refurbished. And then he's working with our local free clinic. So those kinds of things, I think lots of these things are happening. And what I want our program to be is kind of a clearinghouse or liaison between amongst all of them so that we can be redistributing and realigning things to where they can actually be used instead of just thrown away. So
Yeah.
thank
I
you
think
all so much for attending. I
respiratory
appreciate it.
therapy. Yeah.
Thank you, Tara.